Alright guys, I am off to Dundee this weekend to play in my first tournament of the year. It's going to be 1,000 points. I've not played 1,000 points in a long time. It allows you to do some pretty mental stuff, so I'm quite excited for it. I was originally going to go with as much Lothlorien spam as I could, so 3 brothers, maybe a captain, and just as many men as I can, but Jamie gave me this list and he said I had to try it. So this list is a bird bath list, so we take Gwahir as the leader because there is Contest of Champions. We've got Galadriel, Celeborn and a captain on horse. The reason I went with the captain on horse is I felt like the army might need a march to keep up with the eagle. I ended up not using march at all, so I could have gone with one of the 2 brothers, but we live and we learn. This army has 13 shots, which is pretty spicy as well. With Haldir it might have been 15, it could have maybe turned some of the later games. I took 7 Gladden Court Guard, and the rest is just sword boys and bows and spears, with a wee banner thrown in as well. Oh, and of course a cheeky sentinel, which I forgot to put out. Managed to get a practice game in with Jamie, but I got absolutely rinsed. I like to blame it entirely on the dice not being with me, but it was just an absolute filthy Easterling list. Despite getting all the supplies and the modified Seize the Prize that we were going to play, I still got absolutely shagged. However, after the practice game, I did feel much more confident with the army and how it plays. It was my first time using Gwahir and Galadriel, so I definitely needed the practice game. And before I knew it, it was the day of the tournament, it was time to pack up and get ready to go. All packed with Lorien, all my dice and shit. Commissioned dwarfs, I nearly forgot those, that would have been extremely awkward, but thankfully at the last minute I remembered. I don't have a mirror of Galadriel, so we're using the Palantir. Yikes. And my friend is lovely enough to offer me his forgeable Gwahir, and I've already snapped the wing, so sorry Jamie. I'll fix it, I promise. Just getting ready to go, just saying goodbye to the wee man. See you later Bucky. See you later. You going to miss me? Only away for 2 days. And luckily, the ward guys have just put up a Lothlorien episode, so touching up on my Lothlorien skills, see what tips I can learn from the Aussies, because I am taking Celeborn and Galadriel, so perfect timing guys, thank you for that. Also get to watch Liam roll like absolute shit, which is always entertaining. See you later. And with that, it was time to head off.
The next train to depart from platform 7 will be the 1439 Topvale service to Inverness.
Lucky for me, Dundee on most days is only 2 trains away.
Sometimes foreshadowing is relatively obvious.
A quick train into town before making the connection to Dundee, roughly taking about 2 hours. Also found out my Bluetooth headphones no longer pair, which is an absolute nightmare, so I'm going to have to sit and listen to my own thoughts for the whole journey. But luckily, Scotland is absolutely tiny, so before I knew it, I was in Dundee, and Siraj was kind enough to come give me a lift up to the shop, where we spent most of the evening setting up the tables and terrain, etc. Now this is something that Glasgow needs to take a lesson from. A 24-hour bakery. They have every pie you can imagine under the sun, so of course I got 2 of those, and something called a helicopter, which is everything you can think of shoved into a roll. After stuffing my face, we played a quick board game before turning in for an early night, as it was an early start for the tournament the next day. Perfect Scottish weather. Fucking hell, man.
That better be warm, man.
So a quick jaunt in the car over to the shop. When we arrived, there was only a little bit of setup to do. Just needed to make 1 or 2 little tables up for the games later. Once they were complete, people started to filter in, getting ready for the first game. So for my first game, it was the modified Seize the Prize. Instead of 1 prize, there are 3. You don't get any bonus points for taking them off the table, but you still do need to get them into the enemy's half of the board. It's my first time facing a mimic in a game, so I will admit I was a bit terrified as I've never played one before. Seeing it trample towards the middle objective, I decided I would use Gwahir to try and jump and take the one on the left. Luckily rolling a 4 and picking it up. However, next turn I did lose priority and I decided not to call him over Gwahir, so he was able to swarm him with Soladan and the Serpent Riders. Gwahir lost the combat on the left, however I believe he only took 1 wound, which I used all my fate points on and passed one of them. As next turn all my fate would be restored with the mirror. I lost priority again, but I called a move with Galadriel. Celeborn was also already in a triangle formation, ready to receive the Mimic's charge and hopefully survive it. It's been a while now, so I can't exactly remember, but I think Celeborn lost 2 fate and passed both of them, stopping the Mimic in its tracks, thank God. So at the start of the next turn, Gwahir was in control of one of the objectives. The middle objective was under the Mimic, and my opponent had picked up the right objective and passed it on to one of his cavalry, which was hoping to push through into my lines. So as I'd 1 priority, I swarmed the rest of my guys into the Mimic. The shooting managed to kill some of my supports in the combat, however, which meant I wasn't going to get as many attacks against the Mimic as I would like. So after thinking for a while, I had the plan to call a heroic combat with my eagle and with my captain as well. This would allow Gwahir to fly into the Mimic if he won his combat, and my captain to break through his line into the objective carrier and hopefully be able to kill him. The reason I did a combat with Gwahir and not a strike was because Soladan was transfixed by Galadriel. This meant I had the higher fight and I was pretty confident I could win with all my pike and infantry support. I did end up winning both combats, which meant I was able to fly Gwahir over into the Mimic to support that combat, and it also meant my captain was able to swoop through into his Serpent Rider and take the objective off him. I managed to do 7 wounds to the Mimic in 1 turn, which was absolutely fantastic. Fortunately, he passed all the courage checks, so there was no shenanigans to be had by myself. My captain also killed the Serpent Rider on the right that was carrying the objective. This meant that my captain was now in control of the objective on the right. The only one I didn't have was the one under the Mimic in the middle. Unfortunately for my opponent, he lost priority and also lost the move roll-off, so he wasn't able to do any trampling. Only a couple of guys survived the fall off the Mimic, which were easy prey for Gwahir and Celeborn, meaning I was able to secure the middle objective also. Unfortunately for my opponent, he did break at this point, and being Harad, the courage isn't the highest. This meant I was easily able to walk all 3 objectives into my opponent's half of the board. He did do a clever move on the right and used his Betrayer to compel my captain to drop his objective, nearly picking him up some points in the game. Unfortunately for my opponent, Seize the Prize is the only objective where both sides have to quarter for the game to end. This meant Gwahir was able to fly over and eat the Betrayer, thus giving my captain his objective back. As he had no big hitters left and a lot of his army had unfortunately fled, it did mean I was luckily enough able to get all my objectives into his half of the board and kill the rest of his army, securing a 12-0 victory. It was then lunchtime and I got the nachos, which were absolutely fantastic. It also gave me time to admire some of the other games that were going on and the awesome artwork on the wall in the cafe. Next up, Game 2, Hold Ground vs Iron Hills and Thranduil's Halls. I was a bit worried about this one, as Iron Hills are tanky as anything and able to just sit on an objective. This scenario involves having as much of your army in the centre as possible. It is a Maelstrom deployment, but we both got pretty lucky with our rolls. It was really nice for my army being able to deploy together and march up the table as one into the central objective. I know I said I didn't use a march on my captain earlier, but watching this footage now, I definitely did in this scenario to get as much of my army into the centre as possible. I was pretty worried about my left flank as he had 12 guys and 6 goats, 2 of them being captains on goats. Unfortunately for my component, he left his Dane a little bit too far in front of his army, and I was lucky enough to get a compel off with Galadriel to pull him forward out of his line. I then swarmed my army around him with Gwahir. My sentinel also managed to luckily pull one of his goat riders out of formation, which I charged with Celeborn. Blinding light from Galadriel was also key in this scenario as it stopped his crossbows getting any damage on me at all on the way in. So combat this turn was key. I was looking to kill his captain and Dane in one turn. As Dane was compelled, he couldn't call a strike, so I was pretty much guaranteed to win the fight with Gwahir. So I called a heroic combat. I also called a heroic combat with Celeborn here. This meant that if I won both combats, I would be able to trap his captain, which luckily is what happened. This meant that I wiped 5 might off the board in one turn of combat, which was absolutely key for me winning this scenario. So even though I managed to do this, I was still in danger of losing the game as it was an absolute nightmare trying to shift the defense 8 dwarfs off the point. I made a bit of a mistake. I tried to fly Gwahir in behind to get some traps on them, which meant Thranduil was able to get to Gwahir quite easily. Thranduil still had all his might left, whereas Gwahir only had, I believe, 1 left, which meant he was able to strike off more turns than I was. Also, the Elven Blade was a pain in the ass, so I kept losing the combats. Luckily, as I had the mirror in Gwahir's hand, he kept restoring his fate, so he was unable to cause more than 1 wound to Gwahir. But unfortunately for my opponent, because he had lost the 5 might in that 1 turn of combat, I was able to slowly push him back off the point with my numbers. The defense 8 dwarfs and the fight 6 palace guard put up some fight though. It was an absolute slog to do. Eventually I did quarter and I did have more than 3 times the amount of men on the objective. This gave me the full 12 points that you needed in this scenario as I had also killed his leader. Ended up being a 12-1 as Thranduil had wounded Gwahir, giving him a point.
It's just the miniatures.
She's just going to fade
If you want to read.
this direction. But then yes.
Then on to game 3, my favourite, Fog of War. I selected the forest on the left. I wanted to defend Celeborn and assassinate Dunhere. So I was against a fellow GBHL team member this game. Josh was using his awesome fiefdoms with hundreds of models. I was a bit intimidated by the amount of men he had on the table. For some reason we decided it'd be fun to play the river as deep water apart from these 2 ford tiles, which we realised after the game it probably played into my favour as he wasn't able to run his knights across the water without passing a swim test. So on the right I moved up to contest the ford. As all my objectives are on the left, I felt all I had to do was hold that crossing and I would be able to win the game. With blinding light up, I was able to outshoot his rangers. I think even 1 turn I killed 4 in one go, which was pretty painful. I then decided I had to start making a play for the left, so I decided to slowly move up while shooting. Our battle lines then clashed in the centre of the ford. I then decided this was the time I had to make a play to assassinate Dunhere with Gwahir. My plan was to land on this clansman and then combat my way over to Dunhere. Dunhere had already taken 1 wound from shooting, so it did seem like a bit of an easy target for Gwahir. However, I did mean I had to win this key combat to catapult myself up the table. So Gwahir did luckily win the combat. I could have gone for the safe play, which was to just outright kill the clansman, but I decided the hurl was too good to pass up, so I decided to hurl the clansman through the 2 knights. Luckily, I managed to kill the clansman, so I could continue with the combat. I didn't kill anything else, but I did manage to dehorse 2 of the knights, which was a huge bonus in this side of the table. Gwahir then did kill my target Dunhere, which was great. That was 3 points in the bag for me. The rest of the Rangers did scatter into the woods, which was going to be a bit of a nightmare clearing them out, as this was my objective. I then brought Guahir back to help me push through in this river crossing here. Galadriel also managed to compel one of his knights into the river, who then proceeded to drown. I then realised I made a bit of a key error on the right, as I'd left my captain over there alone against Imrahil, Fatih and another captain, and I realised that this captain was probably going to be his target, so I had to send over some reinforcements as soon as possible. My guys on the right were not holding the ford very well. He was chopping through them with the clansmen and the axemen quite consistently. I was a bit worried I was going to lose my captain. However, on the right, Guahir got off another hurl which killed 4 of his backline pikemen, which was incredibly lucky, I will admit. I should not have killed that many. This meant that his position on the left started to fold and I was able to push through with enough infantry to grab the forest. The next turn I lost priority and I also lost the move roll off, which meant he was able to get into my captain with Imrahil and his captain. So this was a huge cock up by myself. I completely forgot he had an assassination target. Imrahil called a combat and him and his captain managed to chop up mine in short order before flanking round the back of my army. Huron also got a 6 on his swim test, so he was able to zoom round the back of my army also, which meant my right flank was looking pretty dire. He was also able to take the hut, which was his terrain objective. The only saving grace here was that Celeborn was able to heroic combat off a simple warrior into Huron, trap him and finish him off in one turn, which was fantastic. However, this distraction from Huron did allow him to get his man into the building which he was needing to capture. Not long after this, the game ended and I thought I was going to be looking at a 6-6 draw. However, in a nice turn of events, Josh revealed that his defensive target was also done here, so I got the extra points and won the scenario. So that was day 1 over. It's time to pack up and go out for a meal with the guys. I was really chuffed with how I done, as I'm still a relatively new player. I think the army list did work really well. At the end of the day, I was in first position with the most VPs at the tournament. Let's hope I'm not attacked by the famous Day 2 curse.
Sometimes foreshadowing is relatively obvious.
So we ended up going out for an amazing curry. It was absolutely fantastic. I had a vindaloo, and because I'm doing dry January, I only had 3 pints. I really enjoyed the meal. It was absolutely great spending time with everyone, but unfortunately all good things have to come to an end. Next morning I decided to have a leftover macaroni pie for breakfast, and I wonder why I'm a fat bastard. We're blessed with a much nicer day today. It was cold, crisp and an amazing sunrise. However, this does come with other issues. So arriving early, I was able to have a quick look at all the incredible prizes on display. So the first game started with me making one of the worst decisions I've ever made in my life. I'm not sure why, but I decided to leave 2 big gaps in my lines. I had a plan to charge my captain through one of them, but he won priority and all his dwarfs got in and around my lines with thrown weapons. Honestly, no idea what the fuck I was thinking here. Maybe the pints and the vindaloo mess in my head, because this setup was beyond brain dead. Floy also turned off Guahir's fly, so it meant he was just flapping about like a mad turkey. Celeborn lost 2 combats in a row to a Vault Warden team who proceeded to wound him both times. We basically had a few turns of just battering off each other in the centre. Dave knew exactly what to do with his dwarfs. He was picking me apart across the board. My elves were just not up to winning any of the combats, as David's banner was absolutely fantastic. Also, if I did win a combat, the defence was just too high. I wasn't able to really kill many dwarfs. However, I was in control of more of the objectives, and at the end of the day it is an objective-based game. I decided I needed to make a play for some of the objectives. Floy had stepped a bit too close and I won the priority and the move roll off, so Guahir was able to jump over to attack him. I sent Galadriel and my captain to the left. The captain was going to kill the single dwarf on the objective, while Galadriel protected them from the bolt thrower with blinding light. Guahir did manage to eat Floy, however it did cost him the last of his might. This left me really open if I was to lose combat in the next turn. The dwarf boy on the objective on the left was an absolute shagger. He beat my captain in combat, despite my captain getting the charge, and then proceeded to kill the captain's horse. As I had broken, there was one turn where if the game had ended, I would have held more objectives. However, unfortunately it didn't end and we kept playing. I wasn't able to win any of the priorities for the next few turns, and Guahir got surrounded and chopped to bits by the King's champion. My captain in Galadriel could not beat up one single dwarf on the left flank either, and David being an excellent player, he slowly picked me apart and gained control of the majority of the objectives. A few turns of chibbing each other and stabbing each other up, and David was now in control of 3 middle objectives, and the 2 in the flanks were both contested. It was time to roll for the game to end.
We forgot to film it, so we're doing a reenactment, and now we can't roll a 2. Live, do you want to just fucking roll a 2? Hurry up.
You sure? I think for this one, break.
That sounds right.
Is that a loaded dice? Is that what that is?
That's it. If it was the usual way, I think it would have flipped it. But
Hey! Thank you. That was great.
It was then on to lunch, provided by the cafe. It was another amazing meal. I had mac and cheese, absolutely delicious. Then game 4, 1,000 points of fucking bears. As the big old bears advanced up the table, I tried my best to pick off as many of the Bjornlings as possible. I think in 3 turns of shooting and the way in, I only managed to kill 2.5 Bjornlings, which was a bit crap. I was hoping for at least 2 a turn. Both bears went barreling up the table. Daddy Bear went into Celeborn and Baby Bear went into a bunch of elves. I then decided to pop Guahir over the top and heroic combat him up the table as we were playing Destroy the Supplies. After speaking to Chris after the game, we do think in hindsight I should have definitely charged Baby Bear with Guahir and finished him off quickly. However, we live and we learn. Surprisingly enough, even though Celeborn couldn't beat a Vault Warden team, he managed to beat Daddy Bear, and I believe we caused 2 wounds and took all his fate, if I remember correctly. It was a week ago, but we severely weakened Daddy Bear anyway. I won priority this turn and made the stupid mistake of pushing some swordsmen forward. My aim was to hold up the Bjornlings for quite a while, but I didn't realise how powerful they were and they chopped through them in 1 turn. Celeborn cast Enchanted Blades on himself and went into Daddy Bear for round 2. However, even though we won the combat, Celeborn, with Enchanted Blades and multiple 2-handing elves, could not put a single wound on the bear. Absolutely gutted. As on the other side of the table, Baby Bear was munching my boys up. Meanwhile, Guahir was flapping about up the back of the board uselessly, slowly trying to kill the supplies. Not taking Baby Bear out with Guahir was definitely a bad call, as I was just getting absolutely chopped to bits. I hadn't faced Bjornlings with my elves before, so I didn't realise how painful they were. They were just utterly destroying me. Meanwhile, Celeborn did manage to finish off Daddy Bear. Guahir got 1 of the supplies. So if my force was to drop below 10 models this turn, the game would end, as I would be at 25% of my starting force. I think one of the biggest disadvantages of the Bjornlings is that they can't not kill you. I was 2-hand fainting with my guys, so I would lose every combat, which I would get chopped in half by one of the Bjornlings. I also made my sentinel do a nosedive off one of the buildings, who proceeded to break his neck. This dropped my numbers to 25%, so the game ended this turn. The game ended in a draw. It would have been a win for Chris, but he was very nice and let me take back one of my Galadriel moves, because I'd made an arse of it and not reading the scenario. If he hadn't let me take that move back, I would have lost the game, so he got my most sporting votes. I was really lucky that the game ended when it did, otherwise Chris would have definitely won this. 1,000 points of bears was definitely one of the scariest armies I have ever faced. We finished quite early, so it gave me plenty of time to wander around and see how everyone else was getting on. After all the results were in, if I was to win the game coming up, I would end in 2nd place, so it was definitely all to play for in our final game. I was up against the Aussie Chris Cousins in what would be a mirror match.
If you'll pardon the pattern.
The scenario was an adapted Conquest of Champions. If your leader died at random, a new leader would be selected on your army. 2 of our battle lines lined up and we ran at each other. My Guahir went for a hurl down the line and his went for Galadriel. Fortunately, I believe both of our Guahirs got transfixed, so nothing really happened this turn, apart from the wild turkeys just flapping about. I then won priority and the roll-off and pulled my Guahir back to his. I was able to surround it with Celeborn, Galadriel and a bunch of infantry support. I was able then to dispatch of his leader. Unfortunately, my Guahir could not land the killing blow as he was transfixed again. Normally, in this scenario, I would be guaranteed to win this game. However, due to the change in rules, his captain then became his leader over on the far flank. And if you notice my line, I think my Elven Blades were made in fucking Goblin Town because I couldn't win a single combat. He pushed my entire line back and killed 4 or 5 of my elves in one turn. Fortunately, that foreshadowing I mentioned earlier meant that my dice had just decided to completely abandon me this game. I think I was only able to get 1 transfix off the entire game. I threw 3 dice at it one turn and got a 2 high. And of course, my Guahir failed to resist every game, so he did absolutely fuck all. Celeborn and my troops were able to move in to help, however, the damage had been done in the middle of my line. I had a big giant gap he was able to push through and exploit. I did, however, manage to kill his captain, his second leader, before he could get a kill as well, so we were still on a 0-0 draw. However, unlucky for me, for a third time, his leader changed and it went to Haldir in the middle of my line, who proceeded to chop up 2 elves and gain 2 victory points. My big old turkey was permanently transfixed, so I couldn't do anything at all with him. There was one turn, I had one priority, I wasn't transfixed. Guahir to charge Galadriel and win the game. And I rolled a double 1 on my courage to charge Galadriel, and Guahir sat and did fuck all.
What was...
I'm definitely not still salty about this at all. I doubt it would even have won me the game anyway. The way I was rolling, Guahir would have probably lost the combat to Galadriel, but I'm going to sit down this salt mine and cry. Sadly, I didn't get any other opportunities to get any kills. Guahir just sat transfixed every turn. My Galadriel was fucking shit and couldn't transfix anyone. Chris is definitely an excellent player, and even he will agree that the dice on this day were not mine. Even if his leader had switched to Galadriel instead of Haldir, it probably ended in a draw, which would have been nice. But them's the breaks you get sometimes. You just need to accept it and move on. So unfortunately, I didn't get second like I was hoping. I ended up in 4th place. Still a good result for my first tournament of the year. But anyway, on to the final results.
And pod 1, Wooden Spoon goes to John Mack, who was already on there. That's all you wanted? Don't do that again. Right, we'll go into the opposite order now because it's choices of prizes as we go. So, overall winner of the tournament, winning pod 1 goes to David Reed. Okay, so we can quickly do all the second place people then. So in pod 1, that was Chris Cousins. Well done. Guys.
Well.
It doesn't want to stop. In which case, oddly enough, we come to 3rd place. So if you haven't been called, it's you. So pod 1, that's Chris Murphy. In pod 2, and the remaining pods didn't have a 3rd place because that was the drop out. So that's everything. So thank you guys. Make sure you've got all your stuff. And thank you, Sean. Thank you, Sean.
So with a fantastic weekend over, it was time to head back home. I always hate the end of these weekends and saying goodbye to everyone. I just think the Middle-earth community is absolutely fantastic. I've not had one bad game at any of my events. I always have a fucking incredible time, and thank you very much to Sean for hosting. So Siraj was kind enough again to give me another lift and drop me at Dundee station. I don't know if you remember the foreshadowing earlier where I said it only takes 2 trains to get back to Glasgow.
So the ScotRail thing said platform 1 for the train to Glasgow. Guess where it arrived? Some other fucking platform. So I missed my train. So I'm gonna fucking get the one to Edinburgh now, changing fucking Edinburgh. So that means like an extra 2 fucking trains to get home.
So instead of the usual 1 train to Glasgow, 1 train home, because of ScotRail, I was going to have to get one of the slow ass trains to Edinburgh. I did get a nice upgrade to first class on the train back to Glasgow as someone was sick in the normal carriage. Every cloud has its silver lining. The Edinburgh train ended up also being late into Glasgow, so I missed my connection home. Decided to stop in the pub for a pint or two while I waited for the next train. 40 minutes later, I finally got my connecting train back home to Drumchapel.
Well, the pilgrimage is nearly complete. I'm nearly home. 1 street away. 4 trains. Oh my fucking god. Fucking home. Right, big man, do you miss me? You miss me? Huh? Did you miss me? Huh? Did you miss me? Huh? Aww. It's just me. It's just me. It's just me. Just me. What are you doing here, Dafty? Did you miss me? Did you miss me? I missed you too. Oh. Huh?
Thanks for watching, everyone. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and remember to give my bell a good old ring.
Wow. I fucking hate ScotRail. Maybe I should just make a YouTube channel where I just sit and shout about how angry I am about ScotRail, because that's what all my fucking videos seem to be about when I go to tournaments.
Right, I think I'm nearly finished. I've managed to shoehorn Bucky into the video. I've complained about ScotRail. I've been incredibly salty. Check. Said thank you to the host. Thank you, Sean, for hosting me. That was amazing. I had an amazing weekend. What have I missed? Oh, fart noise. I've not put a fart noise in. I'll need to do that somewhere. This might be it. Weapons. Honestly, no idea what the fuck I was thinking here. Maybe the pints and the Vindaloo messing with my head. This setup was beyond brain dead. Floyd. I've not got a drawing of a dick in, but I think I'll leave that out. Anyway.
Where'd you get that?
That's fucking shite.
The Bakers.
Absolute shite. I thought a video. Jeremy, get that fucking thing off me.
Yeah, I'll get Right, day 2. The famous day 2 curse. Ooh. Only need to win 1 game to podium. I don't know if I've got it in me. Should not have had the Vindaloo last night, man. It was fucking class, but a wee bit rough today, you know.
Fuck off, these are just some balls.
Right, come on, Bucky. Get off it, Bucky. Come on.
Fuck you.
Try to play some Lord of the Rings here.
Second time that's happened. Bonnie used to come in there.
What are you doing, you fucking...
Yeah.
He wants the healthy bikes.
Oh, he's found his treats. Right, get off, come on.
Oh,
Meanwhile, Camille's in the case like this.
Adam. Is Camille alright? Aye, Camille's fine.
Scotty, get it back up there.